The #1 rock countdown in North America. The LA Lloyd Rock 30.
Hey, it is L.A. Lloyd, and today marking the first appearance from Living Dead Girl as co-host of the Rock 30. We got Molly Rennick with us for her first time. Welcome to the show, and thanks for being here today.
Thank you for having me.
So we got a lot of stuff to cover today, and first of all, I'm glad to get the opportunity to interview you to maybe get you some exposure all over the U.S. and cities that maybe U.S. listeners haven't, heard your stuff yet, but we're going to definitely change all that today. And also, it's a great week for you to be in here as we have 3 songs in the top 10 on the Rock 30 from female-led bands like The Pretty Reckless and Hailstorm and also Evanescence. So I think that's some great company for you to be in today while you're co-hosting. And I got to think maybe 1 or 2 of these bands were influences on you somewhat, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. So which one would you say that has have you ever toured with any of these bands or anyone that may be on your wish list?
I definitely want to tour with Hailstorm. I mean, I'd love to tour with any of the 3 of them, but Hailstorm in particular sticks out to me because I've had the opportunity to meet them a few times and they're such incredible people. I think it would just be such an honor to even get to be on a tour with them.
Well, I've known Lizzie since 2005. She was probably about the same age as you, maybe even a little younger when I first met, and just have enjoyed watching the success they've had through the years. So hopefully this is the beginning of something great for you, and you can be on that same path.
Yeah, that's the goal.
Absolutely. So, you've been asked this question a gazillion times, so I won't ask you today, but, regarding the band's name, which was not named after the Rob Zombie track. So the one thing that I would like to talk about, though, is, say for someone who may be searching out that track and all of a sudden Google pops up your band's name to, someone who may not know you, that's got to be a good thing, right?
Yeah, it was unintentional, but actually worked out in our favor because we have so many listeners who have commented and messaged us and said, I was looking for Rob Zombie and I found this instead, not disappointed. You just got a new listener. So it actually worked out in our favor. And I didn't even consider that when I came up with it.
So I guess you got a lot of fans that maybe interact with you on social media, and I guess they're probably asking you the same thing. Is that kind of the top question you get asked by new fans, or is there something else?
Yeah, that's probably it. Most people think that like we're going to be a Rob Zombie cover band. Yeah. Another thing to consider when I came up with it. But yeah, so many people have asked, are you going to do covers of Rob Zombie songs? What are you are you a tribute? What is this? And I'm like, no, it's unrelated.
Yeah, right. Well, that's cool, man. So obviously you've had a lot of influences. We talked about Lizzie, but let's go back even before that, to the 90s. And, where you talked about Marilyn Manson, obviously, was one that really influenced you. I think you said you might have been 10 or 11 at the time when you first found his music. So maybe talk about that era of music and how it's kind of helped you today, not only with Manson, but maybe some other artists during that decade as well.
I just slipped into the 90s. I was born in 1999, so I just made 90s kid status. But there were so many things from the 90s that I still grew up with, because it was still relevant in the early 2000s. I just loved the style of production in metal back then. The sound of 90s, Marilyn Manson, 9 Inch Nails, Typo Negative and stuff. There's just a sound from the 90s that sounds so distinct. And I think it's probably my favorite era of music, 90s and early 2000s. I don't even know how to describe it. There's just a quality to it that is just so distinctly 90s. I don't know, but there's a lot of 90s influence in Living Dead Girls music for sure, because that's what I grew up listening to.
Interesting you brought up Typo Negative, but, I know that it's kind of hard to hit that vocal range that he had. But would you ever consider, covering some of these bands or something like that? I mean, just as nothing else, just as a warm up and sound check or something like that.
Yeah, I definitely would. Even to put out a covers EP one day, maybe go back to the 90s and play with my influences in that way.
Yeah, that'd be really cool. So you released your debut album June 11th. It's a full-length album with 11 tracks on there, and so many bands that I've talked to, especially up-and-coming bands, say that, the full-length album just is not the way they want it to go. So they may go a single or a couple of singles and then an EP. And then if things still work out, they'll go with a full length album. So first of all, I want to applaud you for putting out the full length, but tell me why you decided to go this route instead of just doing it single by single.
I had so many people actually try to talk me out of it. So many industry people I know, and even like the producer I worked with, people were saying, you're a brand new band. No one expects a full length album. You can get away with just some singles. We could do just an EP. But I just had my heart so set on a full length album. I don't even know why. It just seems like traditional to me, I guess, because every band that I listen to puts out full length albums. I know it's more modern nowadays to just do singles or EPs, but I grew up listening to full-length albums. I'm the kind of person that still buys physical copies of CDs and vinyl. So to me, it just seemed like a tradition, kind of. Like I felt like my first album needs to be a full-length record, the same way the bands that I listen to have done it.
Right. And I guess that kind of goes back to what we were talking about with your 90s influence. I mean, can you imagine if Trent Reznor just put out Closer and that was it, moved on to the next thing? I mean, come on, you got to have that full album, right?
Yeah, like it just kind of felt like a symbolic thing for me, especially like once I got the CDs and could hold it, and like the album photography and the pictures inside, like it felt like such a big collective project more so, whereas like a single would just be like a one, throw it out there and hope for the best kind of thing. I wanted like a whole big project.
I agree with you for sure. We're definitely going to talk about the single Alive a little bit later on today, but in this pandemic COVID, world that we're living in, sometimes it just kind of feels like even now, even though some tours are back out there, that we're still just kind of going through the motions and we're still not back to where we want to be. How are you feeling right now? You feel positive? You feel alive? I mean, do you have a good vibe going on, or do you kind of like me? I feel like I'm still in a holding pattern somewhat.
Well, I live in Canada, where I feel like completely left out. I'm watching all of my American friends go to these huge festivals like
Right.
Incarnation. All my friends are going to these festivals. I live in Canada, where we don't have any of those at the moment. So I feel so left out. I'm like living vicariously through everyone's social media posts at these huge concerts. Like we don't have like any live music here right now. I think you're allowed to play to like 25% capacity of a venue. Wow. So we're really feeling left out right now, because I'm dying to go back out and like play some shows, but it's just so different in Canada right now. So we're trying to make some progress on going to the States, but it's just a lot of logistics and legalities and everything.
So what do you do to pass the time? I mean, outside of music, do you have like a hobby, or I mean, what do you do to kind of get through it all? Because it does suck, as you mentioned, being in Canada and watching everyone down here, get to go to these shows.
Well, I've still traveled to the States a couple times. I'm actually going to Nashville again this Sunday, and I was just there like a month ago, I think. So I keep trying to get away from Canada to go do fun things. But so I do music, I record covers, I do makeup. I have 5 rescue cats that keep me busy. Huge animal lover. I love baking, working out, just anything I can do that's like really physical and hands-on creative, because I like to stay distracted. If I sit still for too long, it's really going to settle into me that I can't go to concerts right now.
Right. I totally get that. So are you going to Nashville to record, do music, or what's the reason for you going there, if you don't mind me asking?
Well, I was just there recording some music a month ago. And so I'm just going back to hang out with like my producer that I work with, and explore the area a bit, because I'm in the progress. Like I've started the progress of moving to the States with an immigration lawyer. So I'm hoping to move to Nashville within the next few months. So I just keep going to like check out the area and just kind of get familiar with it.
So what is it about Nashville? Because, it's so stereotypically known for the country music there, but I'd say in the last, 5 to 10 years, there's so many rock bands, even heavy, bands that are moving to Nashville. What is the allure and the appeal that drives you to want to move there?
I think it's because there's kind of been like a mass exodus from Los Angeles of music industry people. Like so many of my music industry friends have moved from Los Angeles to Nashville. I think mostly because LA is insanely expensive and Nashville's super affordable. But so that's one reason that draws me towards it as well. It's like, wait, I can afford to buy a house in Nashville and my mortgage will be less than my rent in Toronto. So kind of makes more sense. But also there's like such a lively music scene there. Like when I was there a month ago, every single bar I walked into was like a Monday night, like it wasn't even a weekend. And I would just go into like different bars and restaurants walking down like the main strip, and every single one had a live band in it. And like I live in like a small town just outside of Toronto. Like I'm not used to that. It's hard to get live shows here because not many bars have live music anymore. So being in a place where there's a bar or a band in every single bar was just like mind blowing to me. I was like, if I was down here right now, like I could be playing shows right now. So it's just amazing how much live music is there. Like it was surreal to me.
Well, where I'm based at is in Austin. I've been here since the mid 90s, and we used to have that same vibe too. The problem is everyone in LA or California started moving to Austin, which completely drove up the housing cost here. And so what happened was, we're known as the live music capital of the world, but all of a sudden the musicians who lived here couldn't afford, to stay in the city anymore. And they started going to Nashville. So I hope the same thing doesn't happen to Nashville that happened here in Austin, because it really has hurt the music industry. But like I said, I'm glad a lot of folks are moving to Nashville, because it's kind of like Austin in many ways, just with the way it's such a vibrant city and everyone loves to come here. But again, the housing is ridiculous here,
Yeah.
So I want, let's go back and talk about Los Angeles a little bit. While you were there, recording, did you get to enjoy the city, on your downtime, your personal time, or was it pretty much just get up, go to the studio, go back home and go to bed?
Well, I actually booked 6 weeks in the studio, and I think on week 3 or 4, we were done the album. So
wow.
I was joking with my producer. I was like, what do you mean this is going to take 6 weeks? Like, I was like, should we record another album? Like, I'm here. Like, what do we? So I ended up going to Disneyland, I think twice. Yeah, I think we went to Disneyland twice. I did hiking up behind the Hollywood Hills, up in behind the sign and everything. We went to the beach a whole bunch. I ended up just having a few week vacation because we were done working so much earlier than planned.
So now you mentioned your producer. Was this Mitchell, who is now in Nashville? Did he make the move as well? Is that the same person that we're talking about here?
Yeah, so he moved from LA to Nashville, and I was so dead set on moving to LA. I've always wanted to live there. And he was actually kind of part of the reason that changed my mind, because talking to someone who actually lived there and giving me some perspective on how the cost of living there is so high for what it is and everything. So it kind of gave me a change of heart. So I started looking into moving to Nashville instead, because I was like, I don't want every single penny I make to go towards living there. I still need money for my band. So if Nashville's just as vibrant of a music scene as LA, if not more at this point, I was like, it's smarter to move to Nashville.
Right. And, the time I was out there, the same thing. I was living paycheck to paycheck. I knew I was never going to be able to afford a home. So I moved back to where I was originally from on the East Coast, and then came up with the nickname of LA Lloyd. And I could be as far from LA as you could possibly imagine for people who knew me and grew up with me. But here I am with this radio name, LA Lloyd. But I guess it all works out. So you had the album finished. You were going to release it in October 2020. And then I guess you decided to push it back to June of this year. What was kind of the strategy from your team and deciding, to put this out later? Because obviously when you put an album out, you got all these new songs. The first thing you want to do is hit the road and support the album. So what was kind of the strategy behind pushing it back to June?
Basically, we, just like the rest of the world, we did not know what was going on last year. Yeah. So I was thinking, okay, let's put this album off until all this stuff is gone. And then after a couple months, I realized, wait, this isn't going anywhere. We got to still put music out, because I didn't want to wait for the lockdowns and everything to be over. I was just sitting on this album. I was so excited about it. I want people to hear it. But we kind of had to revisit our plan of how to release it, with my manager, my publicist and everything. Because instead of it being let's put out an album and go play shows, it's let's put out an album, but we can't play shows. So can we kind of tide ourselves over with music videos and merch collections, and can we still do enough online to make it exciting and to keep people engaged? So it was really a struggle, because it was my first album and it's self-released. We don't have a record label or anything. So I'm kind of doing all of the work that a team's worth of people would be doing. So it's basically my full-time job at this point, running our website and doing all the merch orders myself and everything. But we just had to kind of change our approach to it, because we knew shows weren't an option. So it was a lot more social media marketing and things like that, because it's if I can't reach people by playing in their local bar, I have to be able to reach them another way.
So is Living Dead Girl, as you mentioned right there, you're wearing a lot of hats, obviously. I mean, is Living Dead Girl just you right now, and you have band members that you record with, or maybe you're going to tour with, or is there an actual band that is Living Dead Girl?
Kind of somewhere in between. It's really myself and our bassist, Jordan. We're the two original members. And we've had some member interchangeables over the years, just because it's hard to find people who live in our area who want to tour and everything, because as a Canadian band, to go tour the States obviously is a pretty big ambition. Most people here are oh, I only want to play music for fun. And that's fine and everything. But it's been really hard to find people who want to do it as a career the same way we do. So we kind of just pick and choose members depending on availability. It's like, okay, we've got this show. Who wants to play it of our like little repertoire of band members that we have? So it's kind of like just mostly Jordan and I who are the actual band members.
Gotcha. Back to Mitchell a little bit. You talked about you went there, you knocked out the album like in 3 weeks. And from what I read, you originally were just going to go there and do, maybe a couple of songs with him, but you wound up doing the entire album. So where was it that you guys realized like, man, we're really clicking. This is jamming and we should, keep this going and maybe do a full album?
So I went down in September of 2019 just for 4 or 5 weeks, I think, just to do 3 singles with him. But that time, like my parents came with me and it was a bit of a vacation as well. But so we just did the 3 singles. We did Alive, Poltergeist, and Exorcism because I just wanted to work with him and see what it was like because I'd never met him. I didn't know what working with him would be like. I didn't know if I was going to go work with this like big producer and I would end up being like intimidated or not listened to or something. Like I didn't know what to expect. I was just going in hoping for the best. And then it turns out like he was super nice and we got along really great. And then we totally just like got music out right away. Like we just sat down and wrote songs like it was nothing. It was so easy to work with him. So then once I heard the 3 mixes, then I was like, okay, this guy needs to do the whole album. Cause like once he sent me the songs, I was like, the bar's been set now. I was like, I don't want anyone else working on this album.
Well, that's good. And I'm glad you kind of brought up your parents because that leads me into my next question of, how supportive they've been of you. Because, I mean, it seems like you kind of knew at a really early age that you wanted to pursue music as a career. So were they a little apprehensive at first? Have they always been, supportive and had your back on this?
They've always been supportive, but I'm very grateful for the way that they are supportive. They're not participation trophy parents. Like they're not my kid's the best, even if I suck. They're not those kind of parents. They're like the more realistic kind of supportive. They're like, if you're doing this, you got to be good at it. And if you're not good at it, work harder. Like that's more their approach. And I'm very grateful for that now because quite honestly, I was a horrible singer when I was like 10 years old, but I was still going out and playing local shows and doing these like singing recital things. And like, finally, they just told me, they're like, you suck. Like you need to work on that and stop doing this in public because it's embarrassing. And at the time, like, I think I was like probably like 13 when that happened. At the time, I was like so mad, but then I like went and like downloaded this virtual singing course that I could do online. And I got a new vocal coach and stuff. And it really pushed me to do better. So now looking back, I'm very grateful that they were like that. And they never just told me, oh, you're awesome, you're the best, even though I wasn't, because that I think is just so damaging as a young person, if your parents just praise you no matter what you do. So they've been supportive, but in the best way you can be supportive. Yeah.
I mean, that's just such a great story to hear that, because I mean, sometimes tough love is exactly what you need to get better. Looking at you today, and we'll definitely share the video online for our listeners and viewers today, but everything I've seen you do, be it photography or music videos or whatever, you have this really keen sense of fashion. And I was curious if it was, do you go shop at special places? Do you have it especially made for you? Do you do your own fashion? Where do you come up with your clothes, especially the attire that you wear when you're live on stage?
I often get my outfits custom made. I find it hard to find clothes that fit me because my body proportions are very strange. I'm like the size of a 12-year-old. So it's really hard to find things that actually fit and that I actually like. So I just kind of found I like things from like Hot Topic and Killstar, and like I have some pieces from there. But the easiest thing for me is just to like send a picture to a designer and have it made, or to pick something off their site and then send them my measurements. So like certain outfits, like the one that I wore in our live video, like that was all custom made by a designer in Toronto. It's called Artifice Clothing. So that's actually my favorite way to buy, is because then I'm supporting an individual designer instead of like a huge corporation or huge company. Like it's sewn by hand. It's really high quality. And then, it's going to fit exactly and perfectly. So that's the way I personally like to shop, is all custom made.
That's pretty cool. How about your tattoos? This is kind of a 3-part question. When did you get your first one? Do you have a favorite one? And do you always go to the same artist, or do you go to different individuals?
My first one was when I was 16 years old, which I don't even know if it's legal or not, but no one ID'd me, so that was cool. I was like, first one when I was 16, and without parent permission too, I might add. So I don't know if that, but I did it. It was a star on my left wrist. It's like one of Avril Lavigne's logos. I got that one at 16. My favorite one is probably the music note I have on my hand, like on the side of my. I say favorite only because I got it in LA the day that we finished recording the album, because I wanted some kind of souvenir. I wanted something that I could just look at and always be like, oh, that was from that day that we finished the album. So that was something very permanent. So best souvenir you could get. And same artist every time for both sleeves. I just keep going back to the same girl because I strayed away from her once when she was on maternity leave. I was like so desperate to get a tattoo and it looked horrible. And then I had to get her to cover it and fix it. So I cheated on her once and I learned my lesson.
That's a funny story. Well, let's go ahead and talk about the song Alive. Now, was this one of the first ones that you guys recorded together there in LA, or was it one that after you had heard those original mixes, you kept on working and this one came out later on in the sessions?
Alive was the very first song that we wrote and recorded together. So it's kind of symbolic that I released it as the first single as well and made it the number one, like the first track on the album, because that song to me is like the song that started it all. So that song kind of has a special place in my heart because every time I hear it, I think of like, that was my first day in the studio and I was writing the song like, when was the last time you felt alive? Because I was just so excited to be there. And I was thinking like, wow, this is the happiest I've ever been in my life. I've never felt like this before. Like I'm so happy to be doing what I love. So I wanted to write a song that like had that feeling in it.
Well, that's great. And before we close out the show today, one thing I like to do is what I call artist pick. So we definitely will have time to play one, maybe two more songs from the album Exorcism. So if you could give me at least one or maybe two picks and tell me why you chose that particular track.
I would say Beautiful and Exorcism. Yeah, Beautiful and Exorcism. Exorcism's the title track, and like the sound is a little bit more experimental than some of the other songs, but I feel like that sound in that song particularly really sticks out to me because you can hear all of my influences in one song. You can hear the heavy metal, you can hear the industrial, you can hear the pop punk. And I think that sound is so uniquely Living Dead Girl. So if there's only one song people could hear that sums up what we sound like, I'd say Exorcism. And Beautiful, that song is just so heavy, so upbeat. Everyone loves the energy of that song. Like that song is impossible to listen to and not bang your head to. So I'd say Beautiful.
That is awesome. Well, thank you so much, Molly. Do you have, I know you talked about trying to get into the States. I know it's a little difficult to pinpoint any touring plans, but are you going to be able to hit some dates before the end of the year? Or is it already pushed back to 2022?
I think we're looking at 2022 just because with work visas and everything, it would really be terrible if we had something booked and then had to cancel it due to things changing with COVID. So we do have a booking agent now and we're working on just like filling 2022 with as many US tour dates as possible.
All right. Well, I'm going to give you one city to put down there, and that's Austin, Texas, because I want to see you guys live, man. I love your music videos and I love the sound of the album. So hopefully next time we get together, we can sit down face to face and chat again.
Yeah, of course. I really want to go to Texas. So that's on my list for sure.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for being on the Rock 30 today.
Thank you for having me.